The very first truth to grasp is that victory does not begin on the battlefield of the world. It is not dependent upon the judgments of others or the circumstances that appear before your eyes. Victory begins in imagination. The world you behold is nothing more than the solidified shadow of inner activity. If you persist in seeing yourself as small, overlooked, and defeated in your inner conversations, the outer world cannot do anything but comply with that inner decree. But when you step into the inner theater and rehearse the outcome of triumph, when you see yourself already standing where you long to stand, then the seed of that experience is planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious. All of life rushes to bring forth the harvest of that inner seed. Imagination is not a daydreaming faculty to be dismissed as childish. It is the workshop of God within you. Every invention, every great idea, every advancement of civilization was first imagined before it was brought into form. The airplane was flown in the mind before it ever lifted from the ground. The great symphonies were heard within before they ever filled the concert hall. The skyscraper stood in vision before it touched the skyline. If imagination holds such creative power for the world, consider how much power it holds for the individual who dares to use it with intention. When you choose to imagine the scene of your victory, you are constructing the blueprint of the life you will inevitably experience. The tragedy for most is that they misuse this sacred power. Instead of imagining success, they rehearse failure. They picture loss. They hold silent arguments where they are defeated. They dwell on scenes that confirm their fears. What they fail to recognize is that imagination, whether used positively or negatively, always fulfills itself. The law of life does not discriminate. If you imagine limitation, limitation will harden into fact. If you imagine victory, victory will eventually clothe itself in circumstances and people and events that match your inner. To act like you already won requires that you first win in imagination. See yourself where you desire to be, not as a wish that one day may arrive, but as an accomplished reality that you are tasting now. If you long for recognition, imagine yourself already receiving it. Hear the congratulatory words in your mind. Feel the handshakes. Sense the relief and the joy of being acknowledged. If you desire healing, picture yourself as already whole. Move in imagination with the ease of a body made well. Taste the freedom of restored vitality. Whatever the victory, rehearse it until it becomes the most natural scene in the world. In time you will find that you begin to carry yourself differently, that your speech shifts, that your actions align with this unseen certainty. The outer world will only be following what you have already enacted in imagination. Now, imagination alone is not enough unless it is animated by feeling. Feeling is the secret that turns an empty daydream into a living seed. A dry, mechanical picture in the mind does not carry the power of creation. It is feeling that fuses the imaginal act with the subconscious. Feeling is the language that the deeper self understands. You may construct 1,000 images of wealth or love or health, but if you feel poor, rejected, or sick, then that is the reality that will be drawn to you. The outer world responds not to words or images alone, but to the emotional conviction behind them. To act like you have already won, you must not merely think the thought, but feel the reality of the wish fulfilled. Suppose you desire success in your endeavors. It is not enough to simply think of success or to picture yourself signing contracts or receiving applause. You must enter the state of success until it feels as natural to you as breathing. The excitement of the victory must be felt in your chest. The gratitude of accomplishment must be alive in your heart. When you close your eyes, let the sensation of triumph fill you so fully that when you open them, the outer world seems pale compared to the inner reality. That feeling, once assumed and persisted in, will harden into fact. This is why many fail in their practice. They attempt to think their way into new circumstances, without allowing themselves to feel it as real. They repeat affirmations without sinking into the emotional tone of fulfillment. They create pictures but remain emotionally tied to the old state. Without feeling, the seed remains lifeless. With feeling, even the smallest imaginal act becomes a force that cannot be stopped. Consider how natural it is to feel defeated. One setback, one rejection, one appearance of lack, and the emotion of despair rushes in without effort. Yet you are just as capable of feeling the opposite. Victory can be felt as easily as defeat, if only you would choose it. Begin small if you must. Feel the relief of a minor success, the gratitude of a small answered prayer. As you practice, your capacity to feel greater victories will expand. Soon you will be able to step into the grandest scenes of triumph and feel them as present realities. Do not wait for the outer world to give you permission to feel successful. If you wait for evidence, you will wait forever. for the evidence only comes after the inner feeling. Begin now, in the silence of your room, in the quiet moments of your day. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Walk as though it were already yours. Speak from the position of victory, not toward it. Let every step be a silent declaration that the outcome is assured. This is not pretending. Pretending says it is not yet real. Acting like you already won says it is already accomplished in the unseen, and therefore it must reveal itself in the seen. When imagination and feeling unite, creation is inevitable. The subconscious cannot resist the impression of a deeply felt imaginal act. It receives it as fact and begins to move the outer world into harmony with it. People will appear, opportunities will open, coincidences will multiply, and what seemed impossible will become natural. But the process begins within. It begins with your decision to rehearse victory in imagination and to feel it with such intensity that it eclipses every doubt. Victory begins in imagination and is secured through feeling. These two together form the foundation of living as though you already won. To ignore imagination is to live as a victim of circumstance. To neglect feeling is to leave your imaginal acts barren. But to claim both, to envision the victory and feel it as true, is to align with the divine law of creation itself. And when you align with that law, the outer world has no choice but to bend to your assumption. The understanding of assumption as the very force that shapes reality is one of the most liberating discoveries you can make. Assumption is not idle hope, nor is it wishful thinking. It is the deliberate acceptance of a state as though it were already true. The world you see and touch is nothing more than the embodiment of past assumptions. You are living in the shadow of what you once dared to accept, or what you carelessly allowed yourself to believe. Every circumstance, every relationship, every achievement or lack of achievement is the fruit of what you assumed to be real, whether consciously or unconsciously. When you recognize this, you gain the key to freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of chance or fate, for assumption, when practiced with awareness, allows you to step into any outcome you desire. To assume is to take upon yourself a new identity inwardly. It is to claim the state of already being the person you long to be. This is not done through force but through acceptance. Just as you slip into clothing and wear it naturally, so to do you slip into an assumption and wear it until it feels second nature. If you assume that you are prosperous, your inner conversations will shift, your mood will carry confidence, and the subtle choices you make will begin to reflect that prosperity. If you assume that you are loved, you will carry yourself with dignity. Your interactions will be warm, and others will respond in kind. The assumption precedes the fact, and the fact simply echoes the inner state you have already claimed. The challenge lies in the persistence of your assumptions. Many imagine themselves successful for a moment, but when the outer world presents contradictions, they drop the assumption and return to the old state of lack. Yet the law remains unbroken. That which you continue to assume will harden into fact, for the subconscious cannot resist the consistent impression of an assumed reality. When doubt arises, return again to the assumption. Live in it, think from it, walk as though it were already your possession. Over time, the old world must yield to the new inner decree. This is why assumption is called the creative act of faith. Faith is not begging for something to come in the future. Faith is the confidence that the unseen is already accomplished. When you assume you already have what you desire, you align yourself with that unseen reality, and by law it must take form in your outer world. It is not arrogance to assume the best for yourself. It is obedience to the law of life, which forever mirrors back to you what you hold within. Now, one of the most remarkable truths about this law is that it is entirely impersonal. The creative power that shapes your life does not stop to judge whether you are deserving or undeserving. It does not consult the opinions of society or weigh your past actions before responding. It operates with the precision of a seed planted in soil. Whatever is sown, whether wheat or weed, must produce after its own kind. The subconscious mind, which is the womb of creation, does not argue with you. It accepts the impression you give it, and through unseen channels it brings that impression into visibility. This impersonal nature of the law is both a warning and a promise. It is a warning because if you persist in assuming failure, in imagining rejection, in feeling lack, the law will not protect you from yourself. It will faithfully produce the harvest of those assumptions. Many people cry out that life is unfair, not realizing that life has simply reflected the seeds they have sown in imagination. But this same truth is also the greatest promise, for it means you can begin anew at any moment. Regardless of your past, regardless of what the world has said about you, the law will respond to your present assumption. The soil does not care what was planted yesterday. If you plant roses today, roses will bloom tomorrow. This is why no one is excluded from the creative process. The beggar and the king operate under the same law. The law does not bend because of wealth or poverty, fame or obscurity, virtue or vice. It is impersonal and unwavering. Whatever is assumed and felt as real will inevitably externalize. Some may find this confronting, for it removes every excuse. Others find it liberating, for it places the power of change entirely within their reach. To live with the awareness of the impersonal nature of the law is to live with responsibility. You cannot indulge in assumptions of fear and defeat without reaping their fruit. You cannot consistently dwell in states of anger and resentment without seeing them reflected back in your experiences. But equally, you cannot assume joy, victory, and abundance without summoning those very conditions into your life. The choice of assumption is yours, but the law will not be mocked. What you assume, you will live. Let us consider how this plays out in daily life. A person who assumes they are overlooked will walk into a room with a certain heaviness, perhaps avoiding eye contact or shrinking in posture. Others, unconsciously responding to this inner state, may overlook them. The person then says, "I knew it, no one notices me." They fail to see that the world is only reflecting what they assumed in advance. Another person enters the same room assuming they are welcomed and valued. Without saying a word, their very presence carries warmth and assurance. People turn, conversations open, opportunities present themselves. To the outside observer it seems like chance, but in truth it is the law-fulfilling assumption. This principle extends to every area of life. The one who assumes wealth will, without strain, begin to think in terms of abundance. They will notice opportunities others overlook. They will carry themselves with the quiet dignity of one who is already provided for, and the world will respond to that dignity. The one who assumes health will carry the energy of vitality, and even their body will begin to conform to the image held in imagination. The one who assumes they are loved will radiate love, and relationships will reorganize to reflect that assumption. All of this unfolds because assumption creates reality, and because the law itself does not discriminate. It does not select which assumptions it will honor. It does not decide that one person is worthy of fulfillment and another is not. It simply fulfills. And this is why the command is always to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. By doing so, you take the creative power into your own hands. You no longer wait for the world to change. You no longer beg circumstances to bend in your favor. You assume, and by the impersonal law of life, that assumption sets in motion the very change you desire. The impersonal nature of the law also explains why two people in identical circumstances can experience entirely different outcomes. One assumes limitation and proves themselves right. The other assumes victory and also proves themselves right. The circumstances did not decide the outcome. The assumption did. This should awaken within you a profound sense of possibility. No matter what appears before your senses, no matter what others may declare, the deciding factor is always your assumption. And since the law is impersonal, you are free to assume the best without hesitation. To master this is to recognize that assumption is not a momentary act, but a way of living. It is not something you do once and forget. It is a posture you carry throughout the day. It is the silent agreement you hold with yourself that what you desire is already yours. It is allowing this inner conviction to govern your thoughts, your moods, your speech, and your actions. In time, the outer world bends to this inner certainty, and what once seemed far away stands before you as an undeniable fact. To live from the end is to abandon the question of when and how altogether, and to move into the certainty that the desire has already been fulfilled. The mistake that many make is to live toward the end, always reaching, always waiting, always hoping for a day that never quite arrives. Living toward the end keeps the desired state forever in the distance. It says, "One day I will have it, one day I will be it, one day I will arrive." But that one day never comes because the assumption of separation continues to push the desire further away. Living from the end, on the other hand, is the conscious decision to occupy the state now. It is to accept the wish as already realized and to allow that conviction to guide your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. Think of a role an actor must play. The actor does not wait for the audience to applaud before inhabiting the character. They do not stand on stage uncertain of whether they are king or beggar. They fully assume the identity, walk in it, speak in it, and move as though the script is already unfolding. In the same way, when you live from the end, you play the role of the person you desire to be. You inhabit it so completely that the world has no choice but to mirror your conviction. This is not about deception or pretending. Pretending implies that you know it is not real. Living from the end is knowing it is real in the unseen, and allowing that unseen reality to determine your inner world. When you practice this way of being, you will find that the tone of your inner conversations changes. You no longer beg or plead, for you do not ask for what you already possess. You no longer question whether it is possible, because the very act of living from the end assumes its reality. You begin to notice that your choices shift, your posture changes, your language carries a quiet assurance. People sense it without you ever declaring it. They respond to the certainty you carry, and soon the opportunities and circumstances of life align to match the state you have chosen. This is why the command has always been to believe that you already receive. Faith is not waiting for a future answer, but living now as if the answer were already complete. Faith does not ask when it will come. Faith says it is here, unseen to the senses, but present to the imagination. Faith rests in that conviction and refuses to be swayed by appearances. In this way, living from the end is the very essence of faith in action. It is important to remember that the outer world is always behind the inner act. Just as the fruit on the tree lags behind the planting of the seed, the outer evidence lags behind the inner assumption. If you look to the world for proof, you will be tempted to abandon your end too soon. The seed does not sprout because you stand over it in impatience. It sprouts because you planted it and trusted the process. So too, when you live from the end, you plant the seed of fulfillment in imagination, and then you rest in the assurance that it must bear fruit. The impatience of doubt will only dig up the seed before it has time to take root. The conviction of faith allows the seed to grow unseen until the day it becomes visible. Living from the end does not mean withdrawing from life or ignoring responsibilities. It means carrying within yourself the consciousness of fulfillment. Even as you go about your daily actions, you may still work, still plan, still take steps in the world, but the difference is in your inner posture. You are no longer striving toward the goal from a place of lack. You are acting from the knowing that the goal is already accomplished. This changes everything. It removes fear. It silences worry. It brings ease to your efforts. You are not trying to create success. You are simply aligning your actions with the success you already are. Hand in hand with living from the end is the power of inner silence. Inner silence is not mere quietness of sound. It is the deliberate stilling of the mind, the choosing of what thoughts you allow to dominate, the guarding of your inner world. Most people fill their minds with ceaseless chatter. They rehearse old failures. They anticipate future troubles. They argue with absent people. They repeat the stories of defeat. All of this noise imprints itself on the subconscious, and the subconscious faithfully reproduces it in outer form. The silence required for creation is not empty but full. It is the silence that holds the seed of your victory, without scattering it by constant contradiction. When you learn to hold your vision in silence, you discover the true power of imagination. You do not need to declare your assumptions to the world, nor do you need to defend them against the doubts of others. The most potent creations are conceived and carried in the quiet of the inner chamber. Just as a child grows in the silence of the womb before it appears in the world, so too must your imaginal acts be nurtured in silence before they are birthed into visibility. Speaking prematurely or seeking validation from others can weaken the conviction, but when you hold the assumption in sacred secrecy, it grows strong within you until no outer contradiction can shake it. Inner silence also means refusing to entertain thoughts that oppose your chosen end. Every time you dwell on lack, every time you rehearse fear, every time you indulge the question of what if it does not work, you are breaking the silence with noise that weakens your creation. True silence is the discipline to turn away from appearances that deny your fulfillment, and to return again and again to the inner conviction of already having. It is not an act of force but of choice. You choose not to feed the noise of doubt. You choose to dwell in the assurance of victory. The world may tempt you to break the silence. It may present delays. It may offer evidence of the opposite. It may send voices of criticism and disbelief. If you allow these outer conditions to dominate your inner speech, you have abandoned the silence and returned to the old state. But if you remain still within, holding fast to the imaginal act and refusing to surrender to appearances, then the world must eventually yield to your assumption. The silence becomes the womb in which your desire is nurtured until it takes on flesh. Living from the end and mastering inner silence are deeply connected. When you live from the end, you automatically silence the voice of lack. When you dwell in inner silence, you strengthen the conviction of the end. Together they form a fortress around your desire. They protect it from doubt, from fear, from contradiction. They keep you rooted in the unseen reality until it manifests as seen fact. Those who learn to combine these two keys walk through life with a calm authority. They are not shaken by appearances, because they know appearances are temporary. They do not plead with life, because they know life responds only to inner conviction. They carry themselves with the quiet dignity of those who already possess their desire, and the world, without fail, rises to meet them at their level of assumption. When you first begin to walk in the consciousness of victory, you may notice that the old thoughts and feelings do not vanish overnight. The patterns of doubt, the memories of failure, the voices of fear may still rise up within you. They whisper that it will not work, that nothing has changed, that you are fooling yourself. This is the moment when persistence becomes the most vital power in your practice. Persistence is the determination to return again and again to the inner vision, no matter what the outer world shouts. It is the steady hand that holds the course when the winds of contradiction blow. Without persistence, even the most powerful imaginal act can be lost, for the world of sense will always test your conviction before it bows to it. Consider how a seed takes root in the soil. The ground does not immediately reveal a harvest. Days pass, sometimes weeks, with no visible sign that anything is happening. To the impatient observer it may seem as if nothing has been planted at all. But beneath the surface, in silence and secrecy, the seed is germinating, pushing roots deep, preparing to break through into visibility. If the farmer were to dig up the seed in impatience, it would never reach maturity. In the same way, when you persist in your inner assumption, even when no evidence yet appears, you are allowing the seed of your desire to grow strong in the unseen, until the time is right for it to appear. Persistence is not a grim, teeth-clenched effort. It is not exhausting yourself with strain. True persistence is quiet faithfulness. It is the gentle but unwavering decision to keep your inner eye fixed on the end, no matter how many times the world presents the opposite. When fear tries to occupy the imagination, you return again to the vision of your triumph. When delay tempts you to doubt, you rehearse again the feeling of fulfillment. When circumstances seem immovable, you remind yourself that circumstances are only the shadow of past assumptions, and that they must eventually give way to your new state. This kind of persistence dissolves resistance. It wears away the hardest obstacles not by force, but by the quiet certainty that refuses to let go of its vision. Think of the sculptor chiseling away at stone. At first the block seems solid and immovable, but with each strike the form hidden within begins to reveal itself. Persistence is the sculptor's hammer upon the mind. Each return to the vision chips away at the old beliefs and reveals the shape of the new reality. No single strike may seem significant, but together they transform the block into a masterpiece. So it is with your inner work. Each time you persist in assuming the end, you are chiseling away at the resistance of doubt until the form of your desire stands revealed. Those who fail often do so not because they lack imagination, but because they lack persistence. They create beautiful images of victory. They feel the joy of fulfillment. But when the outer world delays, they grow weary and surrender. They assume their imaginal act has been wasted, not realizing that they abandoned the seed before it had time to grow. Persistence means you do not measure progress by what you see with the outer eye. You measure it by your faithfulness to the inner state. If you remain faithful long enough, the world must yield, for the law of life cannot be broken. This brings us to the recognition of yourself as the operant power. It is not enough to know that imagination creates reality. It is not enough to admire the law from a distance. You must step into the awareness that you are the one who operates it. The law does nothing without the imaginal act. The power of creation lies dormant until you give it direction. The operant power is you, clothed in imagination and feeling, choosing what to assume, persisting in that assumption, and watching the world conform. Many are tempted to think of the creative power as something outside themselves, as a distant force that may or may not bless them according to its own will. They pray as though begging a reluctant deity, hoping that perhaps their words will be heard. Yet the truth is far more intimate and far more empowering. The creative power of God is within you, as your very own imagination. It is not separate from you. It does not act apart from your assumption. You are the operant power, for you are the one who imagines, who feels, who persists, and therefore you are the one who commands the outcome. This realization removes the crutch of blaming circumstances, fate, or even other people. If you are the operant power, then no outer condition has authority over you. You cannot wait for others to change before you act. You cannot wait for the world to give you permission to assume victory. You must accept that the change begins within you, for the world only reflects what you persist in assuming. This is both a sobering responsibility and a thrilling freedom. Sobering, because it means you can no longer hide behind excuses. Thrilling, because it means you are never powerless, never at the mercy of chance, never trapped by circumstance. To walk as the operant power is to carry yourself with quiet authority. You no longer plead with life, for you understand life only echoes your own assumption. You no longer wonder whether you will succeed, for you have already assumed success and persist in that state. You no longer envy the victories of others, for you know the same power that operated in them operates in you. The difference is not in the law but in its operator. Those who dare to assume and persist live the life they desire. Those who neglect this power remain trapped in a world of chance and complaint. The awareness of being the operant power also transforms the way you handle challenges. Instead of seeing them as enemies, you begin to recognize them as the fading shadows of old assumptions. They are not indicators of failure, but evidence that your new state is dissolving the old. You persist, knowing that the resistance will crumble under the steady pressure of your conviction. Challenges lose their sting when you see them for what they are, temporary echoes of a state you no longer inhabit. It is also vital to understand that being the operant power does not mean you must know how the desire will come to pass. The how belongs to the unseen intelligence that shapes all things. Your part is to assume, to feel, to persist. The law takes care of the channels through which your desire will unfold. To demand that you know how is to step outside your role. The farmer does not need to know how the seed turns into a tree. He only needs to plant, to water, to trust the process. You too must plant the seed of assumption, water it with persistence, and trust the unseen process of life to bring it forth. When you persist and recognize yourself as the operant power, you begin to see life differently. The same events that once seemed like coincidences or accidents reveal themselves as the outworking of your inner state. The same people who once appeared as obstacles transform into instruments of your fulfillment. What once felt like struggle becomes flow, for you are no longer wrestling with appearances, but shaping them from within. You realize that the world is malleable, responsive, and obedient to your assumption. And with this realization comes a peace that cannot be shaken. The marriage of persistence and the recognition of yourself as the operant power is what allows you to act like you already won. Persistence ensures that you do not abandon the vision when the harvest is not immediate. The recognition of being the operant power ensures that you do not place the responsibility outside yourself. Together they form the foundation of creative mastery. Without persistence, you may waver. Without recognizing your power, you may wait endlessly for a savior outside you. With both, you stand as the creator of your destiny, faithful to your vision, unmoved by appearances, certain of the law, and assured of your victory.